I got even more excited about Assassin's Creed Shadows after learning the info and seeing the new gameplay that I will share in this video. For one, we finally have some different outfits and armor sets for Naoe and Yasuke. I love the black-red outfit for Naoe in particular, and also this beefed up samurai armor for Yasuke with the shoulder plates. As I told you before, there are now only headpieces and full armor sets, so 2 gear pieces in your inventory instead of 5. And we learned that you can upgrade all these armor sets as well. Hopefully that's more impactful than the simple rarity upgrade that we saw in Valhalla at the blacksmith. We also learned that next to the Valhalla type gear chest in restricted areas, there will also be legendary gear you can loot in each castle that you have to infiltrate. They should be in special locked chest, and this kind of reminds me of the legendary chests from Odyssey that had some of the more powerful items. They were of course not locked, but I would not be surprised if the special chests look different too. But what's cool is that also unique enemies will drop items, so kinda like the mercenaries or mythical creatures did in Odyssey. But now we in particular have to look out for the samurai daisho, the samurai agents, that can only be found in military castles, so a particular type of samurai. I don't think we have footage of them yet, but they have unique fighting styles that mix a lot of techniques, and they are a stiff combat challenge all by themselves, let alone when surrounded by other samurai. And I think that you can probably skip them if you just sneak around as Naoe or don't like infiltrate a particular part of the castle as Yasuke. But you should not skip them, because they are the gateway to some of the best loot in the game. And what is cool is that fighting tough opponents will also exclusively reward you with mastery points, which are basically the skill points this time around. So you get them through leveling up, like Shadows will have a more traditional leveling system again, similar to Origins and Odyssey. But what we for example saw in Valhalla is that a lot of like random activities, also non-combat activities, would give you skill points in Valhalla. In Shadows, the only other way next to leveling to get mastery points seems to be fighting special opponents. And that makes winning a tough fight more rewarding, and I really love that. So you can spend mastery points on character specific upgrades like adrenaline regeneration or more base health, but also on weapon based skills. And we now learned about all the weapon types both Naoe and Yasuke can use. So let's go over that and way more. Of course, if you like the video so far, leave a like, that would really help me out, so thanks for that. And subscribe, because you don't want to miss the Shadows videos I got coming your way. For Naoe, you got the regular katana, which of course the more balanced playstyle, and I love how she holds the sword. Spending mastery points in the dedicated skill tree means that you can eventually assassinate an enemy through a Soji door. One of Naoe's weaknesses is her defense. She has less health and armor compared to Yasuke and also cannot block. More on that in a moment. So she will drop way faster when fighting multiple enemies. The Kusarigama will help with this though, as you can use the ball and chain to hit multiple targets from a range, and this will actually push them back as well. Really curious if you can just spam this like the flail in Valhalla, but yeah, I expect the Kusarigama to be quite OP, and when up close, you can deal some nice single target damage with the sickle. And we now by the way learned that the Rush Assassinate ability that you can unlock with mastery points lets you jump to targets with a range of 10 meters. But the coolest assassin ability linked to a weapon is of course going to be the double assassination from the air or the ground, and then you have to use the Tento and Hidden Blade combo. The combat gameplay with this combo looks brutal, and yes, we're of course using that detachable hidden blade in combat, which is awesome, and I love the finisher as well. So yeah, Naoe only has 3 weapon types, which on one hand is more than the sword and dagger combo we had in Mirage with Basim, but this is an RPG that they want us to spend hundreds of hours in, so I do worry that it might not be enough unless they add new weapon types to the game quickly after launch. Although it's likely going to be more of an issue with the more combat focused Yasuke. He also of course has the katana, but this one is called a long katana because it's longer than the one Naoe has. But just like for her, this is going to be your more balanced option, especially great in 1v1 duels. The Naginata excels more in groups. We see a special active ability you can unlock with mastery points. that you can only do with this weapon, where you spin it around kind of like the overpower attack from the staff from Odyssey, and then you hit multiple targets. The range also helps to keep the enemies away from you, and we of course have the cannon bow that we saw in action during Ubisoft Forward. This is the heaviest, so also the slowest weapon he has, but if you got it under control, it will deal the most damage and let you easily remove armor from the enemy. I really missed the heavy mace in Valhalla, so great that it's back in Shadows. So 3 melee weapons, but you also got 2 ranged options, and there's something interesting going on with the selection. But first we of course have the Yumi bow, which is Yasuke's only way to do stealth, as other enemies won't be alerted when you drop their friends with a well-placed headshot. We now also learned that we will have a variety of arrows, so I'm expecting fire, poison, etc. again, similar to Odyssey, which will make the weapon way more versatile. But you can of course also use the Teppo rifle. This one has more range than the bow. Ubisoft notes that it has great armor penetration, but also a slower fire rate and longer reload time. And obviously when you shoot the weapon, you will alert the whole camp. But a big change in Shadows, as I speculated before, is that a ranged weapon now also fits in your main weapon slot. Yasuke has 2 weapon slots, and you can choose to go melee and range. Range meaning bow or Teppo, or you can equip 2 melee weapons. I was curious if you could maybe do like a ranged only build, so switch between the bow and gun. That is not possible. But yeah, while in Odyssey and Origins you could still switch between 2 melee weapons and have your bow, in Shadows, when you want to use a bow or gun, you only can use 1 melee weapon, which is quite a change. And it's overall cool to see that there's way more depth in the Assassin's Creed Shadows combat than meets the eyes. Now, of course you got your regular light and heavy attacks, although they do note that some enemies can power through your light attacks, while heavy attacks mostly stagger enemies and of course deal bigger damage. Completely new are posture attacks. Remember the charged heavy attack we saw in Origins and Odyssey that were a ton of fun to use? In Valhalla they turned it into the Vengeance of Thor ability that was actually way stronger if you did not charge it up. Either way, in Shadows they expanded on these attacks, as you can now charge both the light and heavy attack, with the heavy attacks of course being a bit slower. They can both be held indefinitely to adjust your distance or change targets, and then by letting go you break through an enemy's block and can also remove their armor. Now enemies will try to prevent you from using these posture attacks, so yeah, it's smart to charge them up and immediately let go. Now Yasuke does have a sneaky sheathed posture attack where he will charge up an opening strike while his weapon is still in the sheath, so a great way to surprise an enemy and successfully do a posture attack. And we overall should read our enemies way more in Shadows, and there are some interesting differences between Naoe and Yasuke. So both characters can of course dodge, but Yasuke will simply step to the side, with his second dodge actually having a slight recovery period, while Naoe will have the rolls and no recovery period. Yasuke is the only character who can block. Seems like he can do that by just holding a shoulder button to ignore regular attacks and even incoming arrows and kunai. But more powerful is of course the parry he can do. When successful, the enemy will namely be open for a counter attack, while Yasuke just stays put, he stands still. Naoe's parry though is called Deflect. It requires the same timing, but when successful, Naoe will actually go to the side of an enemy, and that opens them up for some nice attacks. But this can also mean that you will then suddenly be in the range of other targets, so it's not ideal. The red glowing unstoppable attacks are back in Shadows. You of course want to dodge out of the way of these, but when blocking, parrying or deflecting them, you will still actually negate some of the damage of this red glowing attack. So they are overall less powerful this time around, but brand new are the flurry attacks that we will see with a blue glow on an enemy's weapon. So when you see this, you can expect a combo with multiple hits, even if you try to counter them, like the hits will always come. But if you parry or deflect all the hits, then you will actually cause the enemy to back down, and then they will get into a glowing orange vulnerable state. And when in this state, you get a short window to deal a lot of damage because the enemy is unable to do anything back. You can also trigger this vulnerable state after a perfect dodge. Of course, let me know your thoughts in the comments, subscribe, we got way more Shadows videos on the way, so you don't want to miss that. A like would really help me out, and check out my previous video with some big changes that were announced for the game. I will speak to you soon, goodbye.